Test, test, test. Hello there, YouTubers. My most beloved supporters and patrons. It's the 10th of May, 2026. Both at Australian Eastern Standard Time / Sydney time and local Peking time for filming this live stream. Kind of so late. Pretty much, nearing the dusk or right during the dusk. But I've spent the time, trying to fight back against you know, depression and bed rotting. Though I wouldn't say that I spent a lot of time doing that fries or rot my rots my brain. Since a lot of time, I've spent a lot of time, just I've spent a lot of time oversleeping just to to escape reality, to both escape from and cope with the reality. And even doing so won't yield ideal or satisfactory results, since more often than not I tend to experience a lot of PTSD related nightmares, no matter whether I choose to follow a natural circadian rhythm by going to bed on time and trying to get up on time, or worse, just sleep and wake up sort of whenever I like. But either way, in either case, more often than not, I tend to suffer both in my dreams and in reality. Though I though I am beginning to doubt if I am still living in the reality as we speak. But enough with the pleasantries. First of all, I would like to thank and shout out to my fellow to my fellow supporters and kind patrons, namely John, Jack, and Odd, and prisoner Mike, and one. I beg your pardon. Just need to check my Patreon page. Oh damn. Yes. Also, much thanks and shout out to the uh, Divergent for having been chipping in your generous and kind patronage for several years, and in particular, John, who has remained a loyal, a highly loyal, highly beg your pardon, patron of mine for for nearly, yes, for I guess for nearly six years now. Ever since the you know ever since I joined Patreon. During, yes, back then, during such excruciatingly agonizing and painful period of mine, you know, of homelessness and exile, and a highly highly distressing and helpless, you know, a period of time within my life. Back then, from late year 2019, all the way until until around July year 2022, and soon after, the what the global clown shit show broke loose, you know, and lasted until around um, late 2022. Yeah, 3 years. Of that, of you know period of how should I put it? Period of sophistry, hypocrisy, and blah blah, and of course, human insanity and incredible level of stupidity, of retardation. Yeah. No, yes, though the current, I won't call the current era or the current era anything less than pure stupidity and sheer retard retard beg your pardon, retardation, and also severe uh, degeneracy. Yeah, degeneracy. Yeah, the current period of humanity, the current era, still mainly features stupidity, degeneracy, and you know ever increasing level of entropy and anarchy. Welcome to the channel and welcome to my clock. Yeah, clock. Well, thank you for this and heartwarming comments. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. Yeah, though I wish I could, find myself in a more pleasant situation than the current one. Yeah, in which can't even I can't even make enough money to sustain my own living expenses. Unlike year 2025 and so on so forth. Back then, at least I could still somehow manage to achieve and maintain a level of self-sufficiency without having to rely upon on anyone, at least to afford H2O and food and some other miscellaneous spendings, you know say yeah, um snack and sometimes face wash, and now I can't even afford to use face wash to cleanse blackheads. But yes, I do have to do so, instead of having to to spend you know and extra amount of money on face wash. Yes, here, let me show you. Just give me a sec. Yeah, here we go. So this tool is the tool that I often use, to just shovel blackheads and some other sort of dirt and filth from my skin. But it's nothing intrusive, but yes, it certainly will cause a bit of um discomfort, to say the least, since you have to apply some force, some pressure to shovel you something deep if your skin. But I do consider this too does come in quite handy. And though and yeah, disclaimer here: I am not sponsored by the vendor or the dealer of seller of such tool. I just happen to have um discovered something like this, on the Meituan app, the equivalent app of you know which you use to order take food in the Western world. Say or something like DoorDash or Food Panda, or blah blah blah. But yes, it costs around three $3 I guess in USD. Yeah, just less than $3 in USD, and around $3 in Australian um, currency. Beg your pardon. I need to plug in, the lamp here, just so that I don't look so dark. Give me a sec. Yeah, there we go. Maybe it's, yeah, there we go. Yeah, so let me read the comment. You did, but you deleted all your videos. I see that someone often donates to you. It's good that some are willing to help out. Yes, I do feel grateful for that, though. Yes, I wish I could, you know, kind of, revitalize or resurrect my business back, in Australia, so that I won't have to, rely upon, you know you guys hard-earned money, and my adopted mom's and my adopted old man's help in order to continue this thing. Yeah, and back to the yes, back to the main topic of this live filming session. Why I titled this live stream, don't start lives and don't start a YouTube channel 2026. Well, the answer is, the answer lies in plain sight. It is damn near next to impossible to grow your channel, to grow your presence, to even earn authentic and legitimate view, make a living on YouTube as an average Joe or an average Jane. Though I highly doubt that. Though I highly doubt. Well, of course, according to the statistics, the metrics, the analytics of my channel, which YouTube has provided. Well, I currently have around 7 to 9% of my total viewers seem to be female. But that's kind of beside the point. Since whoever you are, wherever you are living or residing in, it's you shouldn't really count on something like your your channel on YouTube steady and stable flow of income. Um, even say beg your pardon. Even you are say a sub chat, like some of my viewers call me, though I highly doubt it. But still, first of all, it's you will have to have at least 500 subscribers, and on top of that, you will have to have around, yes, you will have to have at least 300, no, 3,000 watch hours in total, over the past, I'd say over the past 90 days. Yes, not 90 days, I suppose. Yes, in order to get your channel monetized. I currently already have eight more than 880 more than 800 subs. Though I don't mean to boast about it, and I still can't get my channel monetized. Due to the fact that you know viewers don't tend don't spend a lot of time watching videos. You know, Overall speaking, so far I only have just a little bit more than five, a little bit more than 400 you know hours of watching over the past not 90 days in total. So it's not, I don't suppose, for an show um can do so, or you can find some ways to reach that milestone without having to resort to, say, something shady like buying views, or buying another say another channel created by another dude, another or another by another dude, or by another tech savvy man somewhere in India or in some other places. So no disrespect intended towards India, but most of those I suspect most of those vendors of of fake views, fake clicks, and and sellers of YouTube channels are mostly based in India, or at least in South Asia, not just in India but also Nepal, and yes, and Sri Lanka, and blah blah blah. But I haven't been there, so I can't really say much about those places. But yeah, there are, yes, that's, you can certainly I guess you can certainly find some ones, or somehow circumvent YouTube's highly stringent guidelines and systems of censorship. Um, yes, in order to make a living, a fairly, maybe not a decent level of living, but maybe some something like a livable, a livable living. You currently reside in a non-Western country or state or region, you know yeah, where where you don't have to spend a lot on accommodations. And even now, even currently in China, at least in northern part, in the northern part, since I'm currently residing in the northern part, close to Beijing, the or Peking, the capital city, the cost of living has become quite horrendous. Not just accommodation, but also food. And that's why that's kind of precisely why I have been starving over the past months, several months. Though yes, I hope you are doing okay. Thank you so much. for your kind words. I certainly hope that that my life can improve. Though I wish it can can see a drastic and instant improvement. But it's quite stupid, and not to mention that, nowadays to face a constant I beg your pardon. You not you know constant competition and rivalry relentlessly. You know, I AI's slop shorts. You know, on a daily basis. you know, since YouTube nowadays they encourage brain rot short form contents more than any other um more than more than ever more than um periods in human history. And um how should I put it? It's just not practical, and well, you kind of is sort of a thought pattern of highly linear, highly logical and rational thinking, like I do. Then you won't say you can't really count you know on your channel, on your regular types of videos to to generate a sizable amount of views and therefore subscribers, and not and on the other hand, the average span of attention of most NPCs have shrunk, I guess, to less than a minute, even less than 30 seconds. Yeah, 30 seconds. So once say once you once you post videos of regular length and regular type and regular form, the algorithm will kind of shadow ban you. Though maybe it's not something or some mechanism 100% identical to getting shadow banned, but I suspect there the algorithm will just will simply prioritize will simply prioritize on on gig on gig on on hyping you know creators that that create that post and post shorts more often than with regular types of videos. Yeah. That's my speculation. Don't take um that's my speculation and my own my own thoughts about how YouTube algorithm currently works. So take it with a grain of salt. Don't in other words, don't take my word for it. If you wish, just experiment with your ideas or your creativity with yourselves, and see how it goes, say a few weeks or a month later. But yeah, I highly doubt that you will make a decent level of living, by um solely working as a YouTuber, even on a somewhat full time frequency, or uh full time. Beg your pardon. A full time level of commitment. You know, since the current trend is uh how should I put it? Downplay commitment and devotion and loyalty. That's why you will find a lot of backbiters, backstabbers, you know, trolls and haters. Though even I myself can sometimes behave as a troll. Though I don't really troll people that viciously or that frequently. Sometimes I just kind of tease them by posting a bit of sarcastic comments and jokes, just for fun, without attacking them personally. That's based on how I troll. Say I sometimes say whenever some NPC asks you what you do for a living, you simply say, "Well, I well I mine and blow liquid nitrogen into stupid into stupid NPCs assholes like you." Something like that. And maybe you can use that as a sort of to dodge those stupid and highly disrespectful and rude questions those NPCs tend to ask you straight in front of your face. But I doubt I will say so, but we shall see. We shall see, and we shall see if some occasions I find appropriate to experiment such line of dialogue. You know, quote 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 unquote. I blow. I mine. I mine I mine liquid nitrogen, and I blow I mine liquid nitrogen on planet Neptune, and I blow it into NPCs arthurs to keep them awake and frosty. Yeah, that's yes. Well, at least it made me laugh. I don't know if it made you laugh. Yeah. Um. What else? Yeah. So yes, and back to the topic of antinatalism. I don't. First of all, I could care less if you have, if whether you decide to procreate or not, since of my business to intervene with your life, with how you wish to live your life. And I've already have loads of headaches, loads of matters, to take care of. I've already have you know my hands full, so that so I can't really care. I could care less about whether you choose to bring another meat sack or several meat sacks into this um hell realm. But just so you know that, say um e- um e- every gram, every microgram of pleasure, of enjoyment here, they you know they do not come without a cost. Everything you have, for everything you get that either relieves or mitigates your suffering, or your your problems, say water, food, accommodation, love and care and affection. They are not free. And even fapping, even when it comes to fapping, you kind of have to spend some energy and time beating your meat in order to ejaculate, in order to climax slash or orgasm. And but beg your pardon, just give me a sec to switch on the light. Yes. So but in terms of, when it comes to pain, when it comes to discomfort and suffering, they all come right at you, free of charge, free of cost. And they all often they are all chronic, which means they tend to last a lot longer than pleasure, than enjoyment, than fun. In other words, in other words, the negatives far outweighs the positive. And the juice is worth the squeeze. Whenever, say, in terms of work, in terms of the ratio in between the amount of rewards or payment you receive versus the amount of input of hard work. That applies to, say, to conventional nine to five grind, and your endeavor to, say, to be your own boss. Say, in my case, I would say, even in my case, even in some other, so, although I really can't say much about, say, other digital nomads, since I haven't really met and network with them, for nearly a decade. But well, judging from, from the amount of, say, the amount of crimes, the amount of, hate, the amount of violent and intimidating vibe I get, I can smell and perceive online. I doubt they are living their. I doubt they are living their their ideal lives. Since the most, if not nowadays, remain chronically online, just to cope with life, just to soothe, to relieve, to bring some relief to to loneliness, to boredom, to to emptiness. Even I am no exception. I pretty much nowadays remain chronically online, since I well um I, I am, well, except when I exercise and work out, and sometimes I read some books when I take a dump, when I drop some number twos. And when I go out, when I have kind of absolutely have to touch grass, and go out to buy some food, and blah blah blah. you know but um aside from those scenarios, I pretty much like everybody else, remain chronically online. Yeah, absolutely. Suffering seems to last a great deal longer than fleeing pleasure. Schopenhauer also said this. Yes. Yes, I pretty much learned this my own experience. So also know that Schopenhauer, said so. Though I don't tend to memorize the exact quote, and the exact quote from others. Um, but yes, I can confirm that he said something highly similar, if not completely identical. Yeah, when it comes to the ratio between pleasure and pain or suffering. Yeah, and that nearly perfectly um you know upholds and um uh beg your pardon, that nearly perfectly upholds and um uh, justifies antinatalism, and the fact that nothing beats nothing. In order for someone to experience pain, suffering, and suffer from loss and eventually death, he or she has to exist first. You know, you can't make the non-existent people suffer. You know, even God can't do it, since those that you plan to subject to abuse don't exist yet. God can't find ways, can't find workarounds to circumvent that, to bypass, the you know. So yeah, so maybe even there are things God can't do. He can't contradict himself. He can't you know create a piece of rock so heavy that he himself can't carry or lift. You know. Yeah, but that's beside the point, I guess. What else? Yeah, there are something, something, dark that I am kind of, hesitating whether I should, mention them or not. It has with slavery, say, but yes, but whatever, say. I guess that in order to would you say, brother, that this is God, the unknowable aliveness, this emptiness which can't be spoken about because it isn't a concept? Or do you really believe in the God, sky Christianity? Well, short answer is the long answer is I believe in God, but not the God that most mainstream pastors or preachers preach them, you know that preach how loving and how kind he is. Not the God. I believe in God. I believe in a God, not but not a God that those pastors and preachers preach to be. Yes, let's put it that way. But but even so, yes, even say, just bear this in mind. Might makes right, so long as you have the power, to make things happen, and to make people submit to your rules. You can pretty much do you can pretty much do anything you see fit, and that applies to slavery. you know but again, I neither encourage nor oppose slavery, since what is done, what might makes right. um say, even if you do everything in your power to kind of make the world a better place, by playing, by acting like a hero or even God. You will not stop, you will not completely neutralize or eradicate slavery. you know not just sex sex slaves, but also slaves in a more subtle sense. Say that can include, but are not limited to the conventional 9 to 5 grind and marriages, and also I guess the relationship between children and their parents. They are you know essentially, the way I see it, a form of subtle slavery. It's not something. It's not something as compassionate and lovely as the mainstream society tells you it is. Just bear this in mind. Everywhere everywhere I look, everywhere I see, con- everywhere I see and smell conspiracies. Some conspiracies are absolutely true. Say they, you know, like I mentioned, during the global, during the that global clown shit that occurred between year 2020 all the way until late year 2022. Yeah, they basically experiment they experimented with how much of trouble and the the pressure the crowds the those NPCs could tolerate. you know they can then you know customize their their the tools and the guidelines they oftentimes weaponize to control and manipulate and indoctrinate the crowds, the NPCs, into total submission, into doing exactly what they intend them to do. Maximal amount of benefits and profits they can harvest and reap. You know, so the hierarchy exists amongst humans, though not similar like the hierarchy in the Ant Kingdom. But it is a subtle form of slavery, nonetheless. And that should make you come to a realization that in order to make your women, say your wives or your spouses, your girlfriends, truly and totally yours, you kind of have to enslave them. And what the mainstream that's not what the mainstream that's not what the mainstream will will tell you. What to do when it comes to say when it comes to um when it comes to how to maintain a successful marriage or relationship. The most brutal and straightforward way to maintain loyalty in relationship is slavery. It's brutal and simple, straightforward, though not something most people will find pleasant, and that brings us back to the ultimate, at least one of the ultimate, constant, immutable fact of the universe: might makes right. You can't punish or penalize those that wield more power than you do. Say, the second law of thermodynamics, the second, aka the arrow of time, or the law of entropy. Maybe you can do something to slow it down, but stop it. And that means, I guess, the arrow of time, or time itself, enslaves us all in that sense. Yeah. So that should also you know that should also, on the other hand, make you come to a realization that you can't fight, or I should say, you can't change what you have already staged to take place. The YouTube algorithm, you can only follow it, or kind of though you don't actually have to follow it or to please it. Yet, in order to blow up, in order for your channel to blow up on YouTube, you must know how to make it tick, how to make it tick, how to make it like in order for you to earn views, and in turn earn money and profit on the platform itself. Thanks for answering. I appreciate. I tend to be with that. This is called the essence of life itself. This life, on the unknowableness. Thanks. No worries. My pleasure. It is after all, part of my job to attend to your questions as much as I can. Wherever I can, whenever I can. Yeah, no worries, and my pleasure. Yeah. What else? Yeah, and yeah. Last but not least, yes, I would like to talk a bit more about my own perceptions and understanding of God. As a Christian, not the not a maybe so an Orthodox Christian. Say, yes, the first of all, the Bible, never explicitly never explicitly says that the human soul is eternal, and secondly, the Bible, not neither does the Bible says that you will either go to heaven or hell after you kick your bucket. It says the well, one example, yes, comes from the book of Ecclesiastes. It says, not the exact quote unquote, but the key idea is the dead know nothing. And another key idea comes from, yes, comes from the epistles of I beg your pardon. The epistles of Paul written to the Corinthians. Paul basically, used a state of prolonged period of sleep as an analogy, instead of a metaphor, to refer to death. So, so well, I won't say that it's. I won't say that the I made, in the Bible contradicts or a or serves as a debunk, of what those pastors or preachers will say about what will happen to consciousness after death. But you know the key message is, don't take my word for it. Take, slash skepticism. Yeah, skepticism. um yeah, and I agree to a to a very large extent. Whether you go to heaven or might not, might not might not be up to you, but instead it more or less will be at the the discretion, of God, or say, or the supreme entity of this space and time itself. That says, don't take life too seriously. Do what you can to do to find something enjoyable in life, something that makes you feel more alive, instead of bed rotting and doom scrolling, instead of having to resort to something dark, say, pity partying, or playing the game of suffering Olympics. Try to figure out, who suffers more, or who life or the universe owes who more, blah blah blah. Yeah, I think Schopenhauer believed in God also, but not as man in the clouds, but much like how you do of life itself, beingness. This maybe no, since I haven't, I haven't, read, um of Schopenhauer's, of Arthur Schopenhauer's, much of what he wrote, much of what he thought about life still remains rather obscure to me. Since, I have, I my I nowadays I just simply prioritize on my own life, more tolerable, than, thinking about, others, both in the present, those in the present and those gone. Yeah. So yeah, do you guys have um, any more questions or doubts that you would like to get clarified? Um, if not, that then I guess I shall conclude this filming session if you don't mind. Yeah. So so in case you would like to, in case you feel mm, mm, generous, consider smashing the like, and can please also consider liking my subscribing to the channel, since it won't cost half a penny to do so. And yeah, um, yeah, I guess I have talked quite enough for this filming session. And yeah, and yes, about numismatics videos, since most of it, or I should say, pretty much all of it, don't get many views. I guess from I shall make them serve to my patrons and supporters. So who are interested in knowing and learning more about numismatics. So yeah, I guess from now on, unless otherwise mentioned or stated, I shall make them exclusively available to my patrons and supporters. Yeah, so I beg your pardon for such announcement. In case you find it somewhat disappointing or upsetting, but since I don't really get much in return, what's the point of making them? You know, what's the point of making them pub public? Anyway, so I would just do so as as a hobby, instead of instead of you know uh instead of, I beg your pardon, having a bit of brain fog, but you get the point. I just don't find it so rewarding, making them public on YouTube. But the existing ones will remain publicly accessible. Yes, pertaining to numismatics, you can freely watch then anytime, whenever you feel like watching. But in regards, yeah, thank you very much for watching and staying in the and thank you very much for watching and making it thus far during in this live stream. Yeah, until next time, if God's still willing, stay far from weak and stay out. Yeah, I shall see you around. Cheers. Bye. Take care.